Greetings folks! Today we are checking out a pair of vintage mountain bikes, a 1987 Stumpjumper in Danucci green and a Stumpjumper Sport from 1984. Let's do it! Way back in 1984, many years before front and rear suspension became commonplace, there was the original Specialized Stumpjumper. The bike Rich is riding today is a 1984 Stumpjumper Sport, a bike designed for smaller riders with 24-inch wheels. Like all early Stumpjumpers of this era, with the exception of the first year 1981 TIG welded frame, this bike sports a lugged steel frame, a very cool biplane fork crown, and even a funky BMX-style golf club stem that first appeared on the first year Stumpjumpers and later made a reappearance here, with the thinking being it was shorter and would work better for shorter riders. By 1987, the design of the Specialized Stumpjumper had radically changed, with the 1987 model I'll be riding today having a fully TIG welded frame, a beefy unicrown fork, and a rear U-brake, much like the BMX bikes of the time. I find myself drawn to these early fully rigid mountain bikes mainly because of their simplicity, and as a lover of vintage and antique bicycles, these bikes really aren't too far off the kind of bikes you would have seen ridden in the early part of the 20th century with heavy steel frames and balloon tires. Those early bikes were built to take a beating and lasted for generations, and I suspect that these early mountain bikes will do the same. After all, the first mountain bikes were really just old bikes, Schwinn's usually, which the first mountain bike riders called clunkers. Around Mount Tamalpais in California in the late 1960s and early 1970s, a group of teenagers calling themselves the Larkspur Canyon Gang rode these early one-speed Schwinn's, Colsons, and Shelbys to glory, with pioneers like Gary Fisher and Charlie Kelly ultimately seminal in leading the sport to where it is today. I'm not going to get into who designed what and who copied who as far as early mountain bike design is concerned, but with the introduction of the Stumpjumper, it's certain that Specialized was the company most responsible for the mass popularization of the sport. So how do these vintage, fully rigid mountain bikes compare with more modern mountain bikes or even gravel bikes? Well, they're certainly slower than a gravel bike, but given all the extra weight, both of these bikes weigh around 30 pounds, and the upright seating position, that's no big surprise. And given the fact that the bikes have no suspension, it should also come as no surprise that these bikes can be pretty jarring and ultimately darn fatiguing to ride. Still, riding one of these early suspensionless beauties is an experience unto itself. They're more than capable of just riding gravel, while at the same time able to handle some tougher obstacles that you'd never try on a gravel bike. Yes, with no suspension, you'll feel every bump in the trail, but for the most part, I enjoy the feel of the bike making contact with the earth. The most important question is, can you have fun on these things? With the answer being an emphatic hell yeah. Those kids back in the 1960s in Marin weren't having a blast because they were enjoying the latest, most expensive cycling technology. They were having a blast because they were riding their simple, stripped-down bikes where a bike was never meant to be ridden, challenging themselves and their clunkers to push the boundaries of what cycling could be.
Thanks for coming along for the ride, folks. We'll see you next time.